Hello my friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Still trucking along with my 2022 holiday series, although these later ones, like I've been saying, are me getting ready for next year. You know, working a little ahead, which normally never happens, but the creative juices have been flowing and ideas and all sorts of things. So, for today's cards, I ended up making a bunch because I was having so much fun. I pulled out my Distress MICA stains. I mentioned this in a recent video. The Halloween ones I've used a ton. The Christmas ones, for whatever ridiculous reason, I was kind of hoarding them. Again, my thought process sometimes is a little bit silly. But I opened up the packages and I was like, I'm going to make use of these because they're, again, chef's kiss. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. So I have both the Christmas sets. I will post a link because Simon actually stocked up big time this year. You can still get them along with the Halloween sets. Even if you're not big into sprays, these ones are they're kind of unique. They're beautiful. I had shaken them up really, really well before I started. And then I also always kind of make a point to shake them before I even start spraying because you want to get that mica, spread through. Working in my splat box, I know I'm going to get comments about the paper towel. They're bamboo paper towels. I don't like putting scrap paper or watercolor paper or anything like that underneath to repurpose. You totally can. That's great if you want to do that. I just don't want to be bothered. I have enough random stuff sitting around and things disappear on me. So anyway, I used the Christmas colors as well as the purple, which was the fortune teller from the Halloween pack. And I'm just working on just Hammermill cardstock, which is hard to get right now, of course. Any just thinner cardstock is going to work. It's just white cardstock. It doesn't need to be watercolor paper or anything like that. Just regular old cardstock. And I'm just spraying them with these mica stains and just kind of mixing the colors. Each one got at least 2 different colors. No rhyme or reason. I was just having fun with it and ended up doing 8 backgrounds because it's just, everything's just going. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I need to do another one. So I just kept going. And after I was done spraying these, I kept them all just sitting right here. And I'm going to use an embossing folder. I have been just loving embossing folders in general, but I especially love, this is the Glistening Snowflakes embossing folder that comes with a coordinating wafer die. And with Simon's embossing folders, I have my original platform for the Spellbinders Platinum 6 and 2 metal shims. You can always experiment. Like I always say, as long as you're not forcing it through your die cut machine, you're good. Everyone's machine is slightly different. Other people have different sandwich configurations that work. This is the one that works for me. And with these backgrounds, because they're still a bit, they're not like wet, like these sprays dry fairly quickly, but the backgrounds aren't completely dry. And that's great because I didn't want to have to spray the backs of them. I wouldn't spray the front of them. I would spray the backs of the cardstock lightly with water to, soften the cardstock so it embosses better. If you spray the front where you've got the mica stains, these are water reactive. So you're going to get some interesting results, but that might be really cool too. You might end up with like a fun splatter effect. But since these cardstock backgrounds were not fully dry, I just popped them each one into the embossing folder, ran it through my machine. It embossed like a dream. And I just, again, like chef's kiss, chef's kiss, chef's kiss. The shimmer along with the snowflake embossing is just, I was literally like, ooh, look at this one. Every time I'd open up the folder, I'm like, it's so pretty. And then I do it again and again and again. And I could have done way more of these, honestly. This was a lot of fun to just, experiment with the different colors and everything and just do simple backgrounds like that. So I'd done that. And then I used a coordinating wafer die that comes with the Glistening Snowflakes folder. Now with the die, you can die cut and then run it through with the folder and, and emboss that large snowflake. Wasn't going to bother with that. That's a lot of extra steps that I don't think is necessary. But that snowflake, there's also the outline, which I didn't use that either. I just used the snowflake. And I die cut vellum with that snowflake. And I also die cut white glitter cardstock. So those are set aside. I'll deal with those later. And then this for me was an experiment. I had craft foam here. Jennifer McGuire has shown this in a bunch of videos. And those that might remember from years and years and years ago, I have a very much mostly hate relationship with craft foam. I actually broke a die cut machine just trying to die cut craft foam. Not even gonna go there. However, I was just tempted and I was like, okay, I'll see if this works. So I ran this snowflake die with some craft foam through my Platinum 6. It die cut like a dream and it popped up. That was one of the issues I used to have years ago, is like everyone was always like, oh, you die cut it, you leave it for a couple minutes and the foam, you know, pops up from being pressed down. That never ever happened to me. It just always stayed super flat. I don't know. This craft foam worked great. I was able to die cut my little snowflake. It is very finicky, obviously, because it has such, you know, tiny, thin little areas. But what I did with it, again, picked this up from Jennifer McGuire's videos, is turning it into a stamp, which I was like, that's perfect for the insides of my cards. So I die cut the craft foam with the little snowflake wafer die from that set. And then I sprayed PIXIE spray on the back of it. And PIXIE spray is the, you know, very light tack meant for stencils. But I was like, that'd be perfect for this, because other removable, like adhesive runners, those sorts of things, I was like, that's just going to be a pain to try and get that on, again, such a detailed little die cut like this. So the PIXIE spray worked perfectly. So it can be then just temporarily adhered to the lid of my MISTI. And then I'm inking it up with some of Simon's positively saturated inks and stamping it onto the insides of what will be all my card bases. And in between colors, I would just wipe it off with a baby wipe. Again, having to be a little bit more careful because this is just a very detailed, you know, little die cut. But I would just wipe it off, ink it up with the next color, stamp onto the inside of my card. And I loved it. It just, I love when things work out like this, you know? Because, yeah, there's nothing worse than when you break a die cut machine or other, you know, things decide to go wrong. But that was years ago. This is all just new and exciting, and things are working and life is great. So I kept inking up this little foam stamp. And also you sometimes might have to add shims to the inside of your MISTI, because obviously with this little foam die cut, it's thin compared to, you know, a clear stamp, etc. I have not only the foam insert in my MISTI, but I also have one of the MISTI sticky mats that still actually has the cover on it, so it's not sticky right now. But that is kind of working as a shim, and that just helps to be able to stamp this. So if you find that you're trying to stamp with your foam die cuts and you're not able to get a decent impression, is put some, you know, a couple pieces of cardstock, etc., underneath what you're stamping onto to push it up a little higher. So after I was done stamping all the insides with that snowflake, and I'll link to the like specific colors I used of the Simon inks, I pulled out some scraps of white cardstock, and I'm stamping sentiments from this simple holiday greetings stamp set, and I'm stamping these with just Simon's intense black ink. Normally I would use like my VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. However, I didn't want to do any more I didn't want to do heat embossing. And VersaFine Claire Nocturne, if it's not heat embossed, it takes a while to dry. You either need to heat set it or let it dry, especially when you're just stamping it like as sentiments. I smear it every time if I don't heat emboss it, because I'm too impatient. So I chose intense black ink. Easier, faster, no smearing. So I was able to stamp all the sentiments that I will die cut when I'm done this step for the front of the card, and then I stamp the insides of all these cards on top of that snowflake with another sentiment from that same set with the intense black ink, because like I always do when I'm doing multiple cards, do everything in batches. It makes it go so much faster. So, you know, I sprayed all my backgrounds. That was step one. Then I embossed them with the embossing folder. That was next step. Stamped all the insides. That was the step. Did all the die cutting. That was a step. You know, and you just do everything at the same time. Makes it a lot smoother, goes faster, just works. So I die cut all those sentiments. I used Simon's sentiment labels wafer dies, and then my backgrounds that have been, you know, sprayed and embossed and all the fabulous things, I trim those down to smaller than my A2 card bases. So these ended up being my go-to 3 3/4 by 5 inches basically. And I adhered them to these backgrounds with just craft tacky glue. You could totally pop this up with foam tape if you really wanted to give this more dimension and oomph and all that stuff. Foam tape all the way, 100%. I just wasn't in the mood. I was doing a bunch of these and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to sit and cut foam tape for 8 cards. Again, though, craft foam, I could have just cut down the craft foam. See, here I'm thinking, this is, you know, future me thinking. The same craft foam I used to die cut my little snowflake and make a stamp out of, could have trimmed that down. That would have worked great. And then just adhered it with craft tacky glue. So that's an option too, when you don't want to do like 5 million strips of foam tape. But whatever. I wanted to keep these a little flatter just cause. So I adhered the backgrounds to the card bases. And then to adhere the snowflakes, I just did a little dot of glue in the center. That's it. Nothing else is adhered. Didn't feel like I needed it. And you just got to let the glue dry. So I adhered the vellum snowflake first. And then on top of that, I adhered the white glitter cardstock snowflake with just that dot of glue. And I purposely offset them from the background and from each other so that you can see all the, you know, layers of those snowflakes. And then on top of that, I adhered the sentiment strips that I die cut and then trimmed off the sides. And same thing, you could pop these on with, you know, little foam strips, all those things. Like, again, it looks fabulous. It gives it the dimension. It just depends on my mood. Sometimes I'm all about the dimension. Let's do 13 layers and, you know, all the things. And then other times I'm like, no, this is me keeping it simple. This is Amy's version of clean and simple. It's like shimmer and die cuts and vellum and glitter and now bling. So had to add a little bit of bling, but not much because these backgrounds, it's impossible to show on camera, but the shimmer and the sparkle is amazing. But I still wanted to add a little bit of bling. So I'm using these Sugar Glitz discs from Studio Cadia. I showed these recently and loving them. They're just fun. But I purposely chose these ones because one, they're flat, but also because they've got that like white glitter in them. They went really nicely with the white glitter snowflake die cuts. So it just kind of keeps everything matchy, you know. So I adhered those into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. I was going to end it here and just like pair these cards with, you know, shimmery envelopes, whatever. But I was like, well, I've already got my little foam stamp that I've made. Why not stamp just basic white envelopes with my little foam stamp? So the only thing I would do differently is I should have resprayed the back of that little foam stamp with the PIXIE spray. When I peeled it off my MISTI, it left most of the adhesive actually on the lid of my MISTI, which is fine. That comes off with a bit of hand sanitizer. So I was fighting more with the foam stamp because it wasn't as sticky as it was, but still made it work. I put a A2 piece of cardstock inside the envelope before I lined it up and then stamped it. The cardstock just keeps everything like smooth and flat to make it easier to stamp. And then I did the exact same process as I did on the inside of the card. Just inked up the little foam stamp, stamped it onto the envelope, and then just kept repeating until I had matching little envelopes for each of these cards. And that's it. This was so much fun. This was so easy. And the shimmer and the fact that these are pretty flat cards, but there's so much like texture and depth to them with just the die cut snowflakes and the shimmer and the embossing folder and all the fabulousness. Love. MICA stains for the win. Embossing folder for the win with that die cut snowflake. And yay for me being able to actually die cut craft foam and make it work. Now I'm going to be doing this a lot. Because, you know, I got a bajillion wafer dies. And now I'm like, ooh, which one can I die cut next? So anywho, as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have, in the blog post, I'll have the images. I'll have picture links to all the supplies I used. So you can check that out below. I will, of course, also have that info directly below the video. So you can just expand the description box and I'll have links to everything I used. So you can find all of that because I've been getting a lot of questions about that lately. And yeah, I always provide links. I will always specify if I don't have a link for something, but that's rare, 99.9% of the time. I got links to everything so that you guys know, and I always link to where I got it from. So that will be in the description box, as well as, like I said, the link to my blog post, the links to my social medias, all that fun stuff. So you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos. Thumbs up, comment, subscribe if you haven't. I'd very much appreciate it. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.